class as us. They're in the same sports as us. They like the same teams as us. They like the same vehicles as us, right? There are people that we are more comfortable with sometimes than others. We understand them and they share our values, right? They reinforce many times our choices, right? They make us feel better about ourselves when we're around them. You drive a Dodge, and so do I, right? So we can be friends. You drive a Ford, oh, you're on the enemy side, right? You know what Ford stands for, right? Found on roadside daily, right? It's like we can come up with these bias, but oh, you got a Dodge? Oh, yeah, all right, let's do it. You know, we're charging forward together, right? We're ramming through life, right? In salvation, that is also true, right? We sometimes, if we're not careful, we can look for people who look or talk or act like us, right? Maybe they think like us. Acts 11, verse 19.
Those who were scattered after the persecution that arose over Stephen traveled as far as Mysia, Tarsus, and teaching the word to no one but the Jews only.
All right, so here they're scattered all over the place, but it's interesting, even as they're being scattered, who do they reach out to? It says they preach the word to no one but the Jews only. It's like, okay, God is trying to scatter you on purpose so that you don't just preach to Jews. He's wanting you to reach the whole world. Jesus said, go into all the world and preach the gospel. In their minds, they're thinking, go into all the world and preach to Jews. Find only the Jews, and that's who we're going to reach. But that is not the gospel, right? This can be sometimes absolutely a prejudice issue, right? It can be a negative opinion or hostility towards certain groups of people, certain classes of people. Sometimes we don't like a certain race, or maybe we don't like an age group or a religion or a type of people. And so sometimes what happens is that it's not like we like forcibly come against them. We simply don't present them the gospel. John 4, verse 9.
Then, then the woman of Samaria said to him, how is it that you, being a Jew, ask a drink from me, a Samaritan woman? For Jews have no dealings with Samaritans.
Okay, so here John, he is writing this. As you will find all throughout the book of John, he is the disciple who Jesus loved, right? He is very confident in that. He constantly says it. Here, it's interesting. He says, for Jews have no dealings with Samaritans. He understood the Jewish mindset was, we don't talk to Samaritans. We don't deal with them in business. We don't deal with them in life. We stay away from them as much as we possibly can. There are people, like Jesus wanted to save this woman. The disciples, we don't know for sure, but as they're going to the city, right? Jesus stays at the well. The disciples go into the city. No doubt they pass this woman on their way to the city, and they simply just ignored her. She's coming to the well. They could have been the ones that said, you know what? Let me tell you about Jesus. Let's take you to him. But no, instead, they may have even gone on the other side of the road. All right, I'm filling in some of the blanks for you, right? But reality is they went into the city. She was coming out of the city, right? They would have passed by, and they did not present the gospel to her, right? Sometimes it's simply you don't want to inconvenience yourself, right, with reaching certain types of people, right? Maybe we don't understand them. Maybe their values offend us. Maybe someone from that people group in the past, either in salvation or before salvation, has hurt us. Jonah 4, verse 1 and 2.
And then the woman from Samaria said to him, sorry, but it displeased Jonah exceedingly, and he became angry. So we prayed to the Lord and said, Ah, Lord, what not that what I said when I was still in my country. Therefore I fled previously to Tarshish, for I know that you are a gracious and merciful God, slow to anger and abundant in loving kindness, one who relents from doing harm.
Okay, so here, story about Jonah. God sends him to the city of Nineveh. The Ninevites in the past had hurt his nation, right? So he had in his mind, I have reasons to dislike the Ninevites. God, I don't want to go there. I don't want to reach those people. And God says, doesn't matter. You need to go. They need to hear about me. Pastor Greg, years ago, he told of a man in South Africa that, he was talking with him, and he told him these words, Pastor, I want to kill as many, and this was a colored man, colored in South Africa. Give you an idea. There are whites, there are Indians, there are coloreds, and there are blacks. The colored is a mixed race. Right? Many times it's white and black. Sometimes it's Indian and black. But they have very distinct people groups in South Africa. So this man, he was a colored man, and he told Pastor Greg, he said, I want to kill as many blacks as I can. And Pastor Greg said, why? You're saved, number one. That doesn't make sense. But number two, why would you do that? And he said, because they killed my brother. Right? There's times where we're carrying things. It's like, but this black person didn't kill your brother. So why are you're gonna kill him? He had nothing to do with it. Right? He doesn't even know your brother. He didn't even know him. Right? But in your mind, no, they're all the same. Right? And so if we're not careful, we can bring that in to the kingdom of God. In extreme cases, there are times we would not even be upset if certain people were judged. We can come to the point where we say, well, that's good when we see the judgment of God come upon a people, upon a nation, right? Well, maybe they deserved it. We can start to rationalize in our minds. I can remember when I was in Samoa, we had a horrific tsunami that came in and wiped out the entire southern half of the island. In 2009, there was I think it was an 8.3 or 9.1, I forget, a crazy earthquake, right? Earthquakes in California that are bad are usually between 5 and 6. This was over 8. Right? It was a massive earthquake, triggered a tsunami. I think there was, some 250 people that died in that. But I can remember some of the Samoans on the northern side of the island, they immediately said, you know why? That it's God judged the southern side of the island. Like they immediately jumped to the conclusion. They said it's because there's tourism and they're allowing a lot of loose women to come on the southern side of the island. And I said, I can remember my dad and I were talking about it. It was like, but that doesn't make sense because all the nightclubs are on the northern side of the island. Where all the Samoans go and drink and party and hook up, and it's a mess. But in their minds, they're like, oh, but those are the southern side. Right? How true is that in our lives? Maybe it's on the west side of Española. Right? Oh no, it's the south side or the east side or Chimayo or you're from Poake. Los Alamos. Oh, watch out. Right? It's like, we can have these things, right? There were years ago some Lebanese Christians that were speaking to a pastor about Lebanese Muslims. They said these words, they're all going to hell. And between you and me, that's not a bad thing. Christians said that to their pastor. You know what? They're going to hell, but that's okay. It's not a bad thing. Like, woe to us if we ever reach a point where we say that about any people group, right? About any class of people, about any nationality, right? We must have the heart of God. Luke 10, verse 29.
But he
he wanting to justify himself, said to Jesus, "And who is my neighbor?"
Okay, so here's a man. He's asking Jesus, right, what are the greatest commandments? Jesus says, love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. And this man's like, hold on. And who's my neighbor? Right? And Jesus goes through, you know the story if you're a Bible student, goes through the story of the man that gets beaten up, right? The Good Samaritan comes along, and he's the one that tends to him, not the priest, not the Levite, right? All these other, they pass on the other side of the road, but then a Samaritan who normally would have been the one to pass by and say, no thanks, we don't have any dealings, remember? He's the one that reaches out and helps him. But this man, he's wanting to justify himself, right? We do a good job sometimes at justifying ourselves, don't we? As to why we don't reach certain people. How far can I reduce this down? How can I, or who can I eliminate from caring for them? Right? This often is simply a lack of faith. Right? We look at their sin, we look at their lifestyle, right? We look at their mindsets, we look at their cultural beliefs, we look at the mess that they've made of their lives, and we begin to think, how can they possibly be saved? Matthew 13, verse 58.
Now he did not do many things, works there because of their unbelief.
Okay, and this is Jesus, right? There's a time where there's unbelief, right, that's at work, and it's preventing Jesus from working mighty miracles, right? Unbelief, that word, it means faith in reverse, faith in their sin, faith in the culture, faith in the crazy mindsets. They're believing that all of that is going to prevent people from being saved. You know, on outreach, the question is, as we're passing by, as we're outreaching, as we're telling people about Jesus, how many people do we pass by and eliminate? No, they don't want to hear it. No, they couldn't be saved. Here, this one looks like a good sinner. I'm gonna give them a flyer. Maybe they're already interested in Jesus. So let me talk to them. Right? Meanwhile, you've passed by 10, 20, 30 people that are desperate, that are bound by their sin, headed for a devil's hell. We can think, well, they would never listen. Certain types of people, well, they'll never listen. They'll never change. They'll never be open to the gospel. Because of our hearts, if we're not careful, we can hinder or stop the purposes of God in redemption. Jonah 1, verse 1 through 3, going back to the story of Jonah.
The word of the Lord came to Jonah, son of Amittai. Go to the great city of Nineveh and preach against it, because its wickedness has come up before me. But Jonah ran away from the Lord and headed to Tarshish. He went down to Joppa, where he found a ship bound for that part. After paying the fare, he went aboard and sailed for Tarshish to flee from the Lord.
Okay, so here he is fleeing from the Lord. As long as we exclude, as we eliminate, as we refuse to believe and reach out to people, they can't be saved. Think about that. If we write people off, right, and we're the ones that God has called to go and preach the gospel to them, what hope do they have? The Bible says, how shall they hear without a preacher? Right? It's our job. We've looked at in the past couple of lessons to go and reach them. But if we have this bias, we're not careful, we can cause entire people groups to not receive the hope of the gospel. There's an evangelist in our fellowship. His name is Bob Burris. Him and his wife, Jenna, were saved during the Jesus People movement back in the early 70s. in a Baptist church. They were radically saved. They began bringing all their friends into the church. Their friends began getting saved. They said that there were more than 50 of them that came into this small little church. And they were dirty, long-haired hippies, though. Right? And this church, this Baptist church, was a nice, clean church. Lots of elderly people in the church that loved coming and having a peaceful service and no disruptions. And all of a sudden, you got all of these 50 young people that come in that are dirty. They stink. They haven't taken showers in a week. They got long hair. They don't wear the clothes that all the Baptist church was wearing. And all of a sudden, people began to be offended that these were coming to the church. They began to complain. They began to demand to their pastor for them to not allow them to come. You know, the problem was almost all of them left and most of them backslid. The verse is, by the grace of God, wound up in one of our churches there in the Phoenix area, came in and became a part of who we are. But it proves a point. If we're not careful, God can bring us revival. God can bring us a crop of all different types of people. The Bible says that the kingdom of God is like a dragnet, right? It brings in all different types of people. And if we have a bias towards certain types of people that God brings into the church, we can exclude them, which is not pleasing to God. Okay, let's open up. Any questions or comments before we move on? Talking about the tendency of bias. It's in all of us, isn't it? Right? If we'd be honest, right? There's a bias in us. The real question, I remember years ago, Pastor Greg, he preached a sermon called, "Who are your Gentiles?" Right? There are people that are, they may not be, obviously most of us here, as far as I know, are Gentiles, except for Jeremy. He's a Jew. He's got Jewish in him, right? That's an inside joke. He's got a little bit, I think 6%, right? But for the rest of us that aren't Jewish, right? Which I guess Sylvia would probably be Jewish as well. And Jeremiah has a little bit as well. Okay, but long story short, most of us are Gentiles. But put that, theoretically, right? Who are the people that you're biased towards, right? We all have them, right? And if we're not careful, we can bring that into the kingdom of God, and it can cause major problems. Okay, any questions, comments?
You and I have gone out to witness to them, or neither was here mostly. He would bring us the homeless because I told him, I said, he would not let us go to them by ourselves, especially me. His dad was okay, but not me. He would bring them to me, but he would stay there. And whenever I would witness to them, they'd say, well, I said, you need to come to the church because that's where you're going to find Jesus, right? And I mean, they're like, I haven't had a bath for months. Nobody wants me there. And they already knew that. They already knew that they were going to be judged. I even offered, well, come to my house and get a shower, change, take you, whatever, however you want to do it. But they stay out because they realize that they will be judged. And then I've heard some of them go, why are you witnessing to the homeless? They decided to be homeless and get in their sin. And that's what you're talking about.
Yep. Yeah. There's homeless, right? There's those that are addicts. There's those of a different gender, right? Or a different gender identity in our community, right? There's those of a different political class, right? It's like they're in a different, maybe they're not Republican or they're not Democrat. It's like, if you're not careful, you can bring your ideas into how you present the gospel, right? And yes, homeless would definitely be one of them, right? We have to be careful that we don't write them off, right? They're precious souls. They need the gospel, right? If anything, they need the gospel more than anybody, right? It is their only hope out of their situation. Jeremy?
Like the rich man,
Yep.
reach out to them because
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, your economic status. I can remember years ago, I'm going to tell on myself a little bit here. I can remember my pastor challenging me, and it was actually in a serious men. He did a serious men about not only reaching odd and very what was it called, Jackie? Very dependent people or very demanding people, BDPs, right? And so I can remember him saying, there are some of you, the only types of people that you witness to are those you feel are lower than you in life because you feel more comfortable. You feel threatened by anybody that they might be above me in life, right? It's Zacchaeus, right? He's above people. People are feeling threatened by him in multiple ways, right? But yeah, absolutely. That works out in both ways, right? It can be the poor that are afraid of the rich. Well, they're too rich. They can't, possibly, uh, you know, accept the gospel. Oh, but they're too poor, so they can't. So who can then, right? That's why at the end of the day, preach the gospel to everybody, right? And I can remember after that serious men, I went to Pastor Greg and I said, Pastor Greg, I think you were talking about me, weren't you? He's like, well, if the shoe fits, wear it. And we began to work on it, right? I can remember right after that, Matthias joined a sport where everybody that was there drove Mercedes and BMWs. And I was like driving I think we had a Dodge Durango or something, or a Kia. Well, we had a Kia Sedona. No hits on Kia Sedonas, but it was like an old one, like a 2003, and it was broken down. The paint was falling off. Right, we had to use this little thing. This was in our poverty days, right? Like I said, I'm telling on myself. We had to use this little thing to start it. Like we would go in, open up the trunk, start it, and then we can go on, right? And now we're reaching people that are much higher than us in life. But what's interesting is God helped me. He broke something in me. Not only poverty, right? He broke poverty in us, right, through this a course of time, but also he broke in me the ability. You know what? I don't have to just reach. I can reach all people. Right? I can go to Walmart today, right, and go talk to a broad variety of people and be comfortable talking to every one of them. They're not going to look like me. Trust me. Right? I'm the only white person that will be at Walmart. Maybe one or two from Los Alamos, right? But reality is most of them are not going to be white, right? But I can talk to them comfortably, right? I can talk to people that are richer. I can talk to the homeless, right? I can talk to people that maybe they may seem like they're on the same level as me in life. But that is the point. You've got to get to that point, right, where you can talk to anybody about the gospel. Okay, let's move on. Then we'll open up again because that actually leads right into my second point. We'll look at overcoming bias. Jesus Christ, he is God in the flesh, right? He came, therefore, to show us the heart of God. Luke 19, verse 10 tells us.
For the Son of Man came to seek and save those who are lost.
Okay, the Son of Man came to seek and to save who? Those who are lost, which is everybody that doesn't know Jesus. Everyone's lost. God searches for. He goes after who? Lost people. That is who he goes for. Right? He doesn't say, I only go for lost people that are broke, desperate, and stupid. Right? I don't only go for people that are rich and look like they have it all together, but they really don't. No. He goes after the lost. Right? This is why Jesus, you see the broad variety of people that he goes for in life. There are multiple different types of people. Why? Because that is the gospel. Right? It's for those that are lost. Luke 15, 3 and 4.
So Jesus told them this story. If a man has 100 sheep and one of them gets lost, what will he do? Won't he leave the 99 others in the wilderness and go to search for the one that is lost? And so he finds it.
Okay, so here Jesus tells him the story, right? There is a man that he's got 100 sheep. One of them gets lost. What is he going to do? He's going to go after the one, right? Our job in this place today is who is lost in our community. That's who we need to go for. We don't go for religious people. We don't go and say, hey, everybody in Española, come to our church if you're already going to a church. No. If you're already going to a church, God bless you, right? But if you're not and you're lost, where do you need Jesus, right? We preach the gospel. Luke 15, 8 and 9.
Or suppose a woman has 10 silver coins and loses one. Won't she light a lamp and sweep the entire house and search carefully until she finds it? And when she finds it, she will call in her friends and neighbors and say, rejoice with me because I have found my lost coin.
Okay, how many know that if you lose a coin, the coin doesn't know it's lost? Did you know that? The problem is the lost don't know they're lost. They won't find themselves. They must be found. That is our job, to go and find those that are lost. Most churches will say they want people to be saved, but what are they doing? They're waiting for them to come to church. Well, we're the lighthouse in the town. Why don't they just come to our church? No. We are to go and find them. We're to go into the highways and the byways. We had a question in Serious Men this morning about outreach and why do we outreach? It's so that we can reach the lost. Those that are bound on the streets of our city, those that are, that are tormented, that lay their heads down at night, that are tormented by their guilt and their shame. Those whose families have been ravaged by sin, by addiction, by abuse and violence in their families. Those that have no hope, right? Our job is to go and find the lost. Jesus, he goes in our text after the lost. He could have chosen anywhere to go that day, but instead he invited himself to the house of Zacchaeus. Luke 19, verse 5.
When Jesus came by, he looked up at Zacchaeus and called him right.
Okay, here he says, Zacchaeus, come down immediately. I must stay at your house today. Right? He's very clear. Right? He is going after. He has a purpose. Right? He says he reached the spot. In other words, he knew exactly where he was going and who he was going for. Looks up, Zacchaeus, there he is. Right? And he tells him, come down. I'm going to your house today. He finds the lost. Jesus continually shocked the religious Jews because he reached across, right? He reached the undesirable. Those that the Jews were sometimes having a bias or racism towards. Those are the ones that he reached. Think about it, right? He reached Zacchaeus. He reached the woman at the well. He reached lepers, right? Jews were like, we don't have anything to do with lepers, right? Because of their uncleanness and because of the contagious, yes, but also they viewed them as outcasts. Right? We don't want anything to do with them. Our text, we find Luke 19, verse 6 and 7.
Zacchaeus quickly climbed down and took Jesus to his house in great excitement and joy. But the people were displeased. He had gone to be the guest of a notorious sinner, they grumbled.
Okay, we know the rest of the story and how Zacchaeus gets powerfully saved. His eyes are opened. He starts making right decisions. But it says in verse 7, the people were displeased. Think about that. They were displeased by a man that was on his way to hell, that is now on his way to heaven. They were displeased by the fact that Jesus saved a man that had done a life of sin, right? He had tormented his entire community, and now he's going to give back to his community. He's going to completely change his family tree. He's going to no doubt change the entire atmosphere of tax season, right, for his town, right? And all of a sudden, these people, it says they were displeased because of their bias. Let's get some more scriptures here. I need someone to get John 4, verse 9. Jeremy, if you could get that. Mark 2, verse 15 and 16. Marcus, Luciano, Luke 15, verse 1 and 2. Crucita, Acts 10, verse 28. Victoria, 2 Corinthians 6, verse 12. Sylvia, 2 Corinthians 6, verse 13. Darius, you could find Luke 19, verse 8 and 9. Juana, Mark 5, verse 15. Kim Avila, Luke 8, verse 2. I got three more. Acts 10, verse 44 and verse 45. Esteban, Isaac, Acts 11, verse 19 through 21. And then Adrian, John 4, verse 28 through verse 30. Okay, let's read John 4, verse 9.
Then the woman of Samaria said to him, How is it that you, being a Jew, ask a drink from me, a Samaritan woman? For Jews have no dwelling with Samaritans.
Okay, so the question is, who are your Samaritans? Who are those that you have no dealings with? Is it the young? Is it the old? Is it the rough? Is it to those that look like they got it together? Is it a race? Is it an ethnic group? Who is it that you have no faith for to be saved? Who is it that you simply just don't like them? Who is it that maybe, if you be really honest, you hate them? Right? You look at them, and whenever you see, it like grieves you on the inside. You grit your teeth. Oh, I can't believe. Who is it? Who are your Samaritans? Mark 2, verse 15 and 16.
Now it happened as he was dining in Levi's house that many tax collectors and sinners also sat together with Jesus and his disciples, for there were many and they followed him. And when scribes and Moses saw eating with the tax collectors and sinners, they said to his disciples, How is it he eats and drinks with tax collectors and sinners?
Okay, so here Jesus is basically having an outreach. I don't know if they were having carne asada at that outreach. I don't know if they're having pozole. I don't know if they're having green chili enchiladas. But he's sitting down, he's speaking with tax collectors and sinners. And the religious people come along, and you can almost hear a ee in their voice. How is it that he eats and drinks with tax collectors and sinners? I know, huh? Right? They're eating back and forth, right? And you just get this sense of like they are despising Jesus because of who he's hanging around with. Luke 15, verse 1 and 2.
Tax collectors and other notorious sinners often came to listen to Jesus teach. This made the Pharisees and teachers of religious law complain that he was associating with such simple people, even eating with them.
Okay, another translation says, and the Pharisees and scribes complained, saying, this man receives sinners and eats with them. Right? So they are not saying this in a nice way. They're not like, oh man, this guy, he receives sinners, he eats with them. Isn't that wonderful? No. Like, remember, bring out the E again, right? This man receives sinners. He's eating with them. That is not good. Like, why is he doing that? Like, of all the people, he should be eating with us. That's really what they're saying, right? And he should not be eating with them. Our call is to overcome our own bias in life. That is what every one of us should work on as Christians. Find out what is your bias and then overcome it. Reach out to people that are nothing like you. Go to the store today. I challenge you. You go to the store, you go to a restaurant, reach out to somebody that is nothing like you. They're not your same age. They're not your same, maybe, social status. They're not dressed like you. Reach out to them. Overcome that bias. Acts 10, verse 28.
He said to them, "You are well aware that it is against our law to a Jew to associate with a Gentile or visit him, but God has shown me that I should not call any man impure or unclean."
Okay, our fellowship, Pastor Wayman Mitchell, when our fellowship was beginning, he had took over a small church there in Prescott, Arizona. And shortly after he was there, I think it was 3 months after he was there, a young hippie named Ron Burrow came to church. And he came in, he had long hair. He had just been saved recently. Him and his wife had gotten saved. They went to a church that basically told them don't come back because they didn't look like anybody else, kind of similar to the story I told earlier. Pastor Wayman Mitchell, he found out this man, he had come to his church and that he had a hippie commune that he was running. He had a number of people that would come and stay with him that were hippies, and it was kind of like an outreach for him. Pastor Wayman Mitchell, what did he do? He said, you know what? I want to help. Went and he dropped off groceries at this man's house. And Ron Burrow later said, that made such an impact on me that someone cared about me and my people. He said, this is where God has called me to serve God. Right? From that day, he brought in, through the years, Ron Burrow was probably one of the most fruitful men in our entire fellowship. He became the first pastor that was sent to Wickenburg. He became the first missionary overseas to Australia, right? Still saved in our fellowship to this day, right? It began, though, Pastor Wayman Mitchell, he said, you are welcome here. People that look, if you ever saw or heard Pastor Wayman Mitchell preach or saw a video of him, right? He looks nothing like a hippie. He is the exact opposite, right? But he had a heart for people, a heart and a compassion for those that looked nothing like him, talked nothing like him, sung nothing like him, but he had a heart for them so they could be saved. Okay, let's look finally, then we'll open up for questions if we have time. The impact of overcoming bias. There are three things about overcoming bias that make impact in our lives. Number one, overcoming bias is healthy for us. 2 Corinthians 6, verse 12.
You are restricted by your own affections.
It is possible in life that if we are only going after those to reach them with the gospel, those that are like us, right? It's not healthy, right? Because it's going to be limited. There's only so many people like you in the world. Right? There's only so many people in your social class. There's only so many people, right, that think like you, that drive the car that you drive, right? That play the sports you play, that go to your school, that are in your workplace, right? And so what happens is it becomes not healthy. You become very small-minded. And let's be honest, when you become biased, you can become mean towards those that aren't like you. You can become rude. You can become disrespectful towards those that aren't like you, right? And so what we need then is to have health. And how is that going to come? By overcoming that bias. 2 Corinthians 6, verse 13.
As a fair exchange, I speak as to my children. Open wide your hearts also.
Okay, here, open wide your hearts also. This is literally like putting stents in blocked hearts. When you put a stent in a blocked heart, what does it do? It causes blood to flow again, right? It causes health to flow. When we put aside our bias, when we overcome our bias, when we ask God, God, help me with my bias, help me to overcome them, health flows in our lives and in the kingdom of God. Secondly, overcoming bias releases salvation in unlikely people. Luke 19, verse 8 and 9.
Then Zacchaeus stood and said to the Lord, "Look, Lord, I give half of my goods to the poor, and if I have taken anything from anyone by false accusation, I restore fourfold." And Jesus said to him, "Today salvation has come to this house, because he also is a son of Abram.
Okay, here, a lying, cheating, greedy thief, is he able to get saved? Yes, absolutely. Right? Jesus saves this man. Today, salvation has come to this house. Mark 5, verse 15.
Then they came to Jesus and saw the one who had been demon possessed and had the legion sitting and clothed and in his right mind.
Okay, so here, Jesus, you know the story in Mark chapter 5. He goes across the lake and he finds a man that's demon possessed. He casts out the legion of demons. And it says they come to Jesus and they see this man. He used to be demon possessed. He used to have a legion of demons, but no more. He's now sitting, clothed, and in his right mind. Why? Because Jesus reached out to somebody that most other people would have been like, no, you go live in the tombs. No, you stay as far away from our community as possible. You're crazy. You're psycho. You go and live out there in the middle of nowhere. But no, Jesus finds this man. He saves a man that would have been unlikely. Luke 8, verse 2.
And certain women who had been healed of evil spirits and infirmities, Mary called Magdalene, out of whom had come 7 demons, 3 in Joanna, the wife of Chuza, Herod's steward, and Susanna, and many others who provided for him from their substance.
Okay, so here we see a broad variety of women that Jesus saved, right? Mary Magdalene, who had all kinds of evil spirits and infirmities in her, cast out 7 demons from her. There's Joanna, the wife of Chuza, Herod's steward. There's Susanna, many others, right? God saves them, right? People that in those days, women were not, we live in 2026 where women have, a lot of value, right? In those days, women, I hate to say it, but they didn't have as much value as men, right? It was a different day and age, right? They often looked down upon women, but Jesus, not with him. He elevated women. He reached out to women. He saved women. This was very different, would have been expected in those days. Thirdly, overcome bias trigger more than you realize